Okay, so sometime after I set up a YouTube channel, I signed up for a crowdfunding site called Buymeacoffee as an alternative to Patreon. I've been meaning to do a video about it, comparing it to Patreon, just broad brushstrokes, and also just showing how it works, both from the point of view of a creator, as people are called who make videos and podcasts, etc., and from the point of view of a user. However, I wanted to clear up some misconceptions about the whole idea of people paying for content. This is partly because, well, largely because there was quite a lot of controversy about it on a recent Instagram thread from somebody that I follow in the woodworking community in Britain, and also because I shared some of those doubts, if not hostilities, to the idea of paying creators in the past, and I was quite uncomfortable when I started looking at the idea of this, which, by the way, for me was led by my audience. So I thought I would do a part one of this video, and in part two, if you want to jump straight to that, I'm going to show you how the Buy Me a Coffee platform works. If you're going to start a YouTube channel or get very active on Instagram stories, do a podcast, write a blog, then you need to be passionate about whatever it is you're writing about. One of the wonderful things about the internet is that you can talk about your niche interest and you have global frictionless reach, relatively costless reach to other people that share that same weird interest as you. Now, it's not really worth doing unless you really care about the thing, and it's not really worth doing unless you have a real passion for sharing what you care about it, which is usually driven by a desire to help others, or at least to just connect with others who share the same interest. And that's often the case if you're doing something that not everybody around you is interested in. It's very nice to find others that share the same interest. So if you're watching this as a creator or aspiring creator, I would say that don't bother with any of this unless your head is just full of ideas of content that you can't wait to create, putting completely to one side the money and possible future monetary benefit of it. If you simply love a subject and love sharing about it, then you're probably onto a winner to become a content creator in that field. Now, if you're somebody that likes to watch YouTube videos or Instagram stories, you may get very used to certain people providing you with content, and you can start to feel that there's lots of stuff out there and it is inherently free or valueless. The reality is that everybody who's going to create content, no matter how admirable their motives are to start with, is going to hit a point where they have to choose between doing that thing and other demands on their time, which will be a job which has to be done, or, personal activities, family, sleep, etc. I suppose that's obvious, but there will be a point where that hobby of creating isn't entirely sustainable. And for that person to then withdraw from it once they've got a following of people that really like their content and connect with it would be a shame. And I suppose that was what happened with me. I started YouTubing because well, two reasons actually. One was I started sharing the furniture that I make with a view to hopefully getting customers for that furniture, but very quickly realized that I was more motivated by the connection that it gave me with others who make fitted furniture. And I saw a niche interest there in not just carpentry, but fitted furniture, and not just fitted furniture, but metric UK-based methods, and doing it as a business and all the related stresses of trying to make it work as a business. So I found it very helpful to connect with others who were going through the same thing. And a big motivation for me was I loved realizing that I was giving information to people who I'd been in their shoes a few years before, and at the time had wished that I could get a helping hand in getting started in this line of work, because it was very painful in many ways, making mistakes and cutting things wrong, or using a new piece of hardware that you don't understand and it doesn't fit right. So having a guide to both explain the technicalities, but also say it's quite normal to make some occasionally quite serious cock-ups, And also, it's quite normal to have a challenge on almost every job. And part of the process is how you resolve that challenge. So I found that I really loved sharing what I do with other makers. And it started to grow a bit of a following, people that seemed to connect with it. I started to see the same names popping up in comments. And I started to cater to that audience as well, because I saw what people were saying they wanted to know more about. For example, that led on to doing a Sketchup training series. And then, interestingly, I got an increasing number of people who said, where can I go to support what you do? Now, when I started YouTubing, I did have in mind that one day there may be a way to make money from it. I wasn't very well informed. I considered that main way to be advertising, although at the time I was picking up that ad revenue on YouTube was a lot less now than it once was because of a change in the algorithm. I was vaguely aware of something called Patreon, which I just found to be a slightly off-putting name and a slightly off-putting concept. And I just wasn't, I think I'm someone that has always been uncomfortable with asking for money, even for my main line of work. I've always found it very hard to ask a fair price that actually gives me a good living. And one of my most popular videos is where I talk honestly about how to price fitted furniture and the mistakes I've made and how I slowly learned that there is just a very high value to that type of work because so much goes into it. And it's not wrong to ask a good price for it because you need to make a living. So similarly with the online work, I was getting people coming to me saying, we can see that you're spending a lot of time on this. How can we tip you? And in fact, not primarily because of my time, because why should they care? They were saying, look, what you've shared with me has really benefited me. So I've gained value from it. I've maybe won a job based on the knowledge that you shared. So I'm getting, these people effectively saying they're getting a financial return. So they feel it's only right to give something back. So I said, well, okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to turn that away because this is taking more and more of my time. So did a bit of research. In fact, my wife found Buy Me a Coffee, and we looked at a few other things. There was another one called Coffee with a K, K-O-F-I. Settled on Buy Me a Coffee because we just felt that there was a good feel to it, and I was comfortable with the idea of somebody, just if I knew them or they lived down the road and they said, well, can I just buy you a coffee? Can we go out for a coffee? That felt normal and not awkwardly transactional in return for a bit of advice. So set this thing up, people started tipping me in that way, and I set it at £3 a coffee. And that was one of the early nice things about Buy Me a Coffee compared to Patreon, that it had pounds currency from quite early on. And I'll talk more about the features of it in the second video. And then somebody discovered a monthly membership option and signed up without me promoting it or even thinking to promote it. And then I saw the potential in that and mentioned it to others, and the whole thing got rolling. And then what I realized was if some people are giving me something in return for this free content that I'm putting out there, then those people really deserve to have something extra as well. So I felt increasingly awkward about these generous people giving in return for content that people that chose not to give could also find on YouTube, Instagram and podcasts. So I started to create member-only content because I felt I owed it to them. And one of the first things I put out there was some plans, in fact, right here as it happens, these plans that we created over many years of refinement as to how to create alcove cabinets, which is one of the things we specialize in. And I did at one point stop and think, am I being quite unwise because I'm giving away intellectual property? Well, I mean £5 a month, and you get that and lots of other content straight from the outset. But I just decided, that sort of work, I'd long decided that it's the sort of work that's really best done by a one-man band or a small business, because bigger businesses go into kitchens and such like. So I'd rather, all the work we put into creating a system, I'd rather sort of spread it out sideways to others with a little bit of gain back to me than sort of keep hold of it tight as some sort of trade secret and grow upwards myself. At the time, that's what I was thinking. And it's not like it's a trade secret, but there's a lot of refinement that's gone into how we do things. So I started giving away things like that to members, and then more, and then member-only content, and now a detailed series about setting up the new workshop, because this is the old workshop that we are pretty much moved out from now. This is at the back of my house, and we've set up a new space. So I've been sharing again the insights that I wished I could have had behind the scenes of what it takes to set a woodworking workshop up. Never saying that I know everything, not by any means, but saying this is my experience. Learn from it what you can, both from the mistakes and anything that I might happen to do right. So this whole thing about people paying for content, I couldn't sustain the amount of content that I'm giving to people without getting something back for it. And those people that are very cynical about the idea, what they're missing out on, I think, is that it is the most wonderful model for cutting costs, giving great content at the lowest cost, because I'm not printing a magazine and sending it out. I don't have a big team publishing something. It's just me direct to camera or on podcast, and the people that like it can just access it from anywhere. And so, you know, it's very low cost. So it only makes sense for me financially if I get the numbers in. So I give away things that are much more valuable than the price that I give them at. But because lots of people can access it, I can also benefit. The other great thing about the model is, as opposed to, say if you thought, oh, it's much better to just go and find a free YouTube video, why should I have to pay for it? Well, the person creating that free YouTube video is, unless they're just starting out, they're going to have to monetize the time they spend doing the creation. And if they're not charging you for it, they're getting ad revenue, or they're doing product placement, or they're selling mugs and t-shirts or something. And basically it's not that they're in anybody's pocket, but they're going to be steered by where the money's coming from. And the great thing about the Buy Me a Coffee model, or Patreon, or other crowdfunding sites, is that because the consumers are paying the creator for it, they really have a strong voice in the creator's mind. So their feedback will steer what the creator creates, so that he or she can then create things that are more and more tailored to the audience. As opposed to, say, if I was sponsored by, I don't know, like Movac. So I often talk about Movac paints because they're really good and I like them. I don't have a sponsorship deal with them. They've occasionally given me a new product for free if it happens to suit a project that I'm doing. But I've never let myself get tied into an obligation that I need to say certain things about certain products. So that keeps me independent, and it keeps me accountable to my audience. Okay, well, that serves as an intro to Buy Me a Coffee from my point of view, my experience. I think just to summarize, if you're an aspiring creator, then do just focus on what you're passionate about, and don't worry about who's watching or not watching at the start, because that's your time to get confident and to find your voice and your way of presenting things. Just get started, focus on what you find interesting, and you will eventually find people are drawn to you who also find it interesting. I hope that's what usually happens if you stick at it. You've got to stick at it. And if you're someone that watches these sorts of videos, do consider the time and costs that go into people creating them. And if you find content that you love, consider whether you can give back to make sure that content continues, but also to have a bit of a voice in what might be created in future. Okay, well, thanks for watching this far, and if you're still interested, then do have a look at the next video where I'll show you how Buy Me a Coffee works, how to use it both as a creator and as a user of it, and just a few insights into the back end of it.